There is a type of family relationship that can slowly drain your confidence without you immediately realizing what is happening. It is the relationship where a relative quietly competes with you. At first, it may not look like competition at all. They may laugh with you, they may congratulate you, they may tell you that they're happy for you. They may even say all the right things when other people are listening. But pay attention to what happens when your success becomes real. Do they become strangely quiet? Do they minimize what you achieved? Do they immediately compare your success to someone else's? Do they turn your good news into a joke? Do they remind you of your past mistakes whenever you start making progress? These small patterns can reveal more than a dramatic argument ever will. Not every family member who disagrees with you is jealous. Not every sarcastic comment is evidence of hidden competition. People have bad days. People misunderstand each other. Sometimes someone is simply giving you honest criticism. The key is repetition. Watch the pattern. A person who genuinely supports you may challenge you sometimes, but they don't consistently need to reduce your confidence. They can be honest about your weaknesses while still celebrating your strengths. A competitive relative behaves differently. Your success seems to activate something inside them. When you announce good news, they immediately tell you about something they did that was bigger. You receive an opportunity, and they explain why it isn't as impressive as you think. You improve your appearance, career, business, education, or finances, and suddenly they have a reason to remind you that you're not special. You may even notice that they become more enthusiastic when you fail than when you succeed. That is when you should start paying attention, because hidden competition can create a strange psychological environment. You begin feeling that you have to apologize for doing well. You stop sharing good news. You become afraid of appearing too confident. You hesitate to celebrate achievements because you expect someone to criticize them. And eventually, you start shrinking yourself just to keep the relationship comfortable. Never do that. Your success does not need to become smaller so someone else can feel bigger. You are allowed to grow. You are allowed to improve your life. You are allowed to become more successful than the people around you. And you do not have to feel guilty about that. But there is another lesson here. Don't respond to competition by becoming competitive yourself. That only pulls you into the same psychological game. You don't need to prove that you're better. You don't need to win every comparison. You don't need to make them jealous. You simply need to keep building. Let your life speak. If someone repeatedly reacts to your progress with negativity, you don't have to create a family war. You can simply become more selective about what you share. Not every plan needs to be announced. Not every goal needs an audience. Not every financial detail needs to be discussed. Not every personal success needs to become family news. Privacy can be a healthy boundary. Sometimes the smartest response to hidden competition is not confrontation. It is reduced access. You can remain polite. You can remain respectful. You can attend family gatherings. You can speak normally, but you don't have to hand someone every detail of your life if experience has shown that they use those details to compare, criticize, or undermine you. Trust should be based on behavior, not blood. Being related to you does not automatically make someone emotionally safe. And recognizing that does not make you cold. It makes you observant. Your responsibility is not to assume the worst about every relative. Your responsibility is to notice who consistently celebrates your growth and who seems uncomfortable whenever you rise. The people who genuinely love you don't need you to fail so they can feel successful. They can watch you grow without turning your progress into a personal threat. And once you learn to recognize hidden competition, you'll be better prepared to identify another dangerous pattern. The family member who smiles in front of you, but repeatedly turns your private life into public information. One of the most painful lessons you can learn about family is that closeness does not automatically guarantee confidentiality. Sometimes the person you trust most is the person who quietly turns your private life into public information. You tell them something because you believe it's safe. You share a problem because you need someone to listen. You explain a personal struggle because you think they care. You reveal a future plan because you want encouragement. And then, somehow, other people know. A relative knows, a cousin knows, someone at a family gathering knows, and suddenly, something that belonged to you has become a topic of conversation. That is when you need to understand the difference between being close to someone and trusting them with sensitive information. Those are not always the same thing. Some people genuinely care about you, but have poor boundaries. They may not intend to hurt you, but they still repeat things because they don't understand the importance of privacy. Others may deliberately use private information for attention, gossip, comparison, or influence. The outcome can be the same: your trust gets damaged. This is why you should never judge confidentiality by someone's words alone. Someone may say, "You can tell me anything." What matters is what they do after you tell them. Do they keep your information private? Do they ask permission before sharing it? Do they protect your vulnerable moments when other people become curious? Or do they immediately turn your personal life into a story they can tell someone else? Watch how they handle other people's secrets. This is one of the clearest ways to understand how they will treat yours. If a family member constantly tells you private details about other relatives, don't assume your information will somehow receive special treatment. The person who casually shares everyone else's business is showing you their pattern. And patterns matter more than promises. You also need to become more selective about what you share. Not every family member needs to know your financial situation. Not everyone needs to know your relationship problems. Not everyone needs to know your next business idea. Not everyone needs to know your fears, insecurities, or long-term plans. Privacy is not secrecy. Privacy is ownership. It means understanding that some parts of your life are yours to reveal when you choose. This becomes especially important when you're going through a difficult period. When you're emotionally vulnerable, you may feel a strong desire to explain everything to someone you trust. You want relief. You want understanding. You want someone to confirm that you're making the right decision. But before sharing everything, pause. Ask yourself what this person has done with your trust in the past. Have they protected your confidence? Have they listened without turning your situation into gossip? Have they respected information you've previously asked them to keep private? If the answer is consistently no, then giving them more information won't suddenly create trust. Trust is earned through repeated behavior, and once someone repeatedly breaks confidentiality, you don't have to make a dramatic announcement that you're ending the relationship. You can simply change the level of information they receive. You can remain friendly while becoming private. You can speak about ordinary things without discussing sensitive matters. You can be respectful without exposing your vulnerabilities. That is a healthy boundary. Some people may accuse you of changing. They may say, "Why don't you tell me things anymore?" You don't need to argue. You can simply understand that access is earned. Not every person deserves the same version of you. Your most sensitive information should go to people who have demonstrated that they can carry it responsibly. This is not about becoming paranoid. It is about becoming wise. You shouldn't assume betrayal before it happens. But you also shouldn't ignore repeated evidence just because someone shares your last name. Family relationships can be valuable, loving, and supportive, but healthy relationships still require boundaries. The strongest trust is built when someone consistently protects you, even when you're not present. They don't use your weaknesses as entertainment. They don't repeat your struggles for social attention. They don't turn your private decisions into family debates. They understand that your vulnerability is not a public resource. And when you recognize this, you stop oversharing simply because someone is familiar. You become more intentional about trust. You start watching actions. You start protecting your private world. And you realize that one of the clearest signs of trustworthiness is not how much someone tells you. It is how carefully they protect what you tell them. Once you understand that, you'll be ready to recognize another dangerous family pattern. The person who uses guilt and emotional pressure to make you do what they want. Another difficult pattern to recognize within a family is the person who uses guilt to control you. This can be one of the hardest forms of manipulation to identify because it often arrives disguised as love, concern, sacrifice, or family responsibility. They don't always say, "Do what I want." Instead, they say things like, "After everything I've done for you," or "I can't believe you would do this to your own family," or "If you really cared about me, you wouldn't say no." The words may sound emotional, but the message underneath is often the same. Your choices are only acceptable when they serve someone else's expectations. That is where guilt becomes a weapon. Guilt is a natural emotion. When you genuinely hurt someone, responsibility matters. If you've made a mistake, apologizing and repairing the damage is healthy. But manipulation begins when guilt is repeatedly used to make you surrender reasonable boundaries. You want to protect your time, and suddenly you're selfish. You decline a request, and suddenly you're ungrateful. You make a decision about your career, and suddenly you're accused of abandoning the family. You choose your own relationship, and suddenly someone acts as if your decision is a betrayal. Notice the pattern. The issue is no longer what you actually did. The issue becomes whether you're willing to make yourself uncomfortable enough to keep someone else satisfied. And if you constantly surrender to that pressure, you teach the other person that guilt works. They learn that they can create discomfort, and you will eventually give in just to restore peace. That can become a cycle. They pressure, you resist. They become emotional. You feel guilty, you give in, temporary peace returns. Then the same pattern happens again. Over time, you stop making decisions based on your values and start making them based on avoiding someone's emotional reaction. That is not healthy loyalty. That is emotional control. One of the strongest things you can learn is to separate responsibility from guilt. Responsibility asks, "Did I do something wrong?" Manipulative guilt asks, "Can I make you feel bad enough to do what I want?" Those are completely different questions. If you genuinely made a mistake, own it. If you hurt someone unfairly, repair it. But if you made a reasonable decision and someone simply dislikes it, their disappointment does not automatically mean you are wrong. This distinction can save you years of unnecessary emotional conflict. You can tell someone, "I understand that you're disappointed, but this is still my decision." That sentence is powerful because it acknowledges their feelings without surrendering your judgment. You don't need to attack them. You don't need to prove that they are manipulating you. You don't even need to use the word manipulation. You simply refuse to let guilt make the decision for you. This becomes especially important when family expectations are involved. Families often develop traditions and assumptions about what each person should do. You may be expected to follow a particular career, live in a certain place, financially support someone, choose a certain lifestyle, or prioritize family needs above your own goals. Some responsibilities are genuine and should be taken seriously. But responsibility has limits. You are still an individual. You have your own future, abilities, goals, and decisions to make. Being part of a family does not mean surrendering your entire identity. And sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is disappoint someone. That sounds harsh, but it is true. You cannot build an authentic life while making every decision based on whether everyone around you will be pleased. Someone will be disappointed, Someone may complain. Someone may misunderstand. That discomfort is sometimes the price of independence. The goal is not to become insensitive. The goal is to become emotionally steady enough to tolerate temporary guilt without betraying your long-term values. This is why boundaries become so important. Don't argue for hours. Don't keep repeating the same explanation. Don't let every emotional reaction pull you back into negotiation. State your position clearly. Listen respectfully, then make your decision. And pay attention to what happens next. A healthy family member may not like your decision, but eventually they can respect that it is yours. A controlling family member may escalate. They may increase the guilt. They may involve other relatives. They may bring up old sacrifices. They may remind you of everything they have ever done for you. At that point, recognize the pattern. Gratitude does not mean permanent obedience. Love does not require self-abandonment. And family loyalty should never require you to surrender your entire sense of self. You can appreciate what someone has done for you while still making independent decisions. You can love someone deeply and still say no. You can support family while protecting your own future. The strongest response to guilt-based control isn't anger. It is calm self-respect. Because once guilt stops making your decisions, you become much harder to control, and that prepares you to recognize another pattern. The family member who only seems to value you when you are useful to them. Another pattern you need to recognize is the family member who seems to value you most when you are useful to them. This can be difficult to see because they may not appear cruel. They may call when they need advice. They may become unusually friendly when they need money, a favor, a connection, transportation, emotional support, or help solving a problem. You may even feel important because they suddenly pay attention to you. But then notice what happens when you have nothing to provide. Do they still call? Do they still ask how you're doing? Do they still show interest in your life? Do they remember your struggles, your goals, or the things that matter to you? Or does the relationship become almost silent? This is where you need to distinguish between genuine family connection and one-sided usefulness. Every healthy relationship involves some form of giving and receiving. Families naturally help one another. There is nothing wrong with supporting someone during a difficult period. In fact, helping people you love can be one of the most meaningful things you do. The problem begins when the relationship only exists when you are providing something. You become the person they call when they need money, the person they call when they need a favor, the person they call when they need emotional support, the person they call when they need a connection. But when you need something, they suddenly become unavailable. That imbalance can slowly damage your self-respect because you start confusing being needed with being valued. Those are not the same thing. Someone can need what you provide without genuinely valuing who you are. That's an important distinction. Imagine a family member who contacts you every week when they need assistance but rarely asks how you're doing. Every conversation quickly becomes about their problem. Every request is urgent. Every favor is treated as if you are obligated to provide it. At first, you may help because you don't want to seem selfish. Then another request comes, and another. Eventually, your generosity becomes an expectation. You are no longer appreciated for helping. You are simply expected to help. That is when resentment begins. The solution isn't to become heartless. It is to create limits. You can say, I can't help with that right now. You can say, I'm not comfortable lending money. You can say, I don't have the capacity to take this on. And watch what happens. A healthy person may be disappointed, but they will usually respect your answer. Someone who only values your usefulness may react very differently. They may accuse you of changing. They may call you selfish. They may remind you of times they supposedly helped you. They may suddenly become cold. That reaction gives you information. It doesn't automatically mean they are a bad person. People can become dependent, stressed, or emotionally immature. But if the same pattern keeps repeating, you should pay attention to it. Trust should not require you to constantly prove your usefulness. You are allowed to be loved without providing a service. You are allowed to have a bad month. You are allowed to struggle. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to have nothing to offer except your presence. If someone only values you when you're useful, they are not really connecting with your whole identity. They are connecting with the benefits they receive from your presence. This is also why money can become especially dangerous inside families, because family expectations can make financial boundaries feel almost impossible. You may feel guilty for saying no because you fear being labeled selfish, but helping someone financially should be a choice, not a permanent obligation. If you continually sacrifice your own stability to rescue another person from consequences they refuse to manage, you may eventually damage both your relationship and your own future. Sometimes, the most responsible thing you can do is refuse to enable. Support can mean encouraging someone to solve their problem instead of solving it for them. That is not abandonment. It can be a form of respect. You are allowing them to develop their own strength while protecting yours. And the same principle applies to emotional support. You can listen to someone without becoming responsible for fixing every problem they bring you. You can care without carrying everything. You can help without allowing your identity to become the family emergency service. Healthy relationships have reciprocity. They don't have to be perfectly equal every day. Life changes. Sometimes one person needs more support than the other, but over time there should still be mutual care, mutual respect, mutual interest, mutual effort. So don't judge a relationship by how warmly someone treats you when they need something. Judge it by how they treat you when you have nothing to give. That is where character becomes visible. And once you understand that, you'll be ready to recognize another boundary problem. The family member who calls interference, control, and disrespect love. There is another kind of family relationship that can become dangerous over time because it disguises control as love. This is the person who constantly crosses your boundaries and then tells you they are doing it because they care. At first, it can sound reasonable. I'm only asking because I'm worried about you. I'm family, so I have a right to know. I'm saying this because I love you. I know what's best for you. But concern has a limit, love has a limit, and neither one gives someone unlimited ownership over your life. A healthy family member can care about your decisions without demanding control over them. They can offer advice without insisting that you obey. They can express concern without invading your privacy. They can disagree with your choices without treating disagreement as betrayal. The difference is respect. When someone repeatedly ignores your boundaries, that respect begins disappearing. They may go through your personal things. They may demand access to private conversations. They may criticize who you spend time with. They may interfere in your career decisions. They may question your finances. They may tell other relatives about your personal choices. They may expect to know everything happening in your life. And when you object, they may say, "Why are you hiding things from your own family?" That question can make you feel guilty, but privacy is not betrayal. Having boundaries is not disrespect. Growing into an independent adult is not abandoning your family. You are allowed to have parts of your life that belong only to you. This becomes especially important when families become overly involved in personal relationships. A relative may believe they have the right to decide who you should marry, where you should live, what career you should pursue, or how you should spend your money. Advice can be valuable, control is different. Advice gives you information and leaves the decision with you. Control gives you information and demands the decision belong to them. Learn to recognize that distinction. You can say, "I appreciate your concern, but I will make this decision myself." That sentence doesn't attack anyone. It simply establishes ownership over your own life. And sometimes that will make people uncomfortable, especially people who became used to having access to every part of your life. When you begin setting boundaries, they may accuse you of becoming distant. They may say you're disrespectful. They may remind you how much they have done for you. They may compare you to other relatives. They may tell you that real family doesn't keep secrets or ask for space. But healthy family relationships can survive boundaries. In fact, boundaries can improve them. Because when people know what is private, what is acceptable, and what is not, there is less confusion and less resentment. The problem comes when one person believes love gives them permission to ignore the other person's autonomy. That is not love. That is control wrapped in emotional language. And once you recognize it, don't respond with equal control. Don't invade their privacy in return. Don't humiliate them. Don't create a family battle simply to prove that you are independent. Use calmness, reduce unnecessary information, limit involvement where appropriate, repeat the boundary when necessary, and let your actions demonstrate that the boundary is real. You can remain respectful while becoming less accessible. You can attend family events without discussing every personal decision. You can answer ordinary questions without revealing sensitive information. You can love someone while refusing to give them complete authority over your life. That is maturity. And there is another important point. Not every intrusive family member is intentionally manipulative. Some people were raised to believe that closeness means constant involvement. They may genuinely think they are helping. That is why the first response should often be clear communication rather than immediate judgment. Say what bothers you. Explain what you need. See whether they respect it. Their response tells you everything. A healthy person may need time to adjust, but they will eventually understand. A controlling person may repeatedly cross the same line, challenge your independence, or increase the pressure when you resist. That repeated pattern is what matters. Trust isn't based on someone saying they love you. Trust is based on whether their love still respects your autonomy. You are allowed to protect your privacy, your decisions, your time, and your peace without becoming cruel. Because family should be a place where love and boundaries can exist together, not a place where love is used as a reason to control you. And once you understand that, the final lesson becomes essential. Never judge trust by a family title alone. Judge it by consistent behavior, accountability, honesty, and respect. The final lesson is the one that can protect you from all the others. Stop judging trust by family titles and start judging it by consistent behavior. Being a parent, sibling, cousin, uncle, aunt, or any other relative does not automatically make someone trustworthy. Blood creates a connection, but trust is created through actions. This is important because people often make a dangerous assumption. They think, they're family, so I should trust them. And sometimes that assumption is beautiful. Family can be one of the greatest sources of support in life. But family can also contain jealousy, gossip, control, selfishness, and unresolved resentment. The answer isn't paranoia. The answer is discernment. You don't need to assume that everyone is against you. You need to become observant enough to recognize patterns before those patterns become serious problems. Look at consistency. Does this person keep their promises? Do they respect your privacy? Can they admit when they're wrong? Do they apologize without immediately blaming you? Do they respect your boundaries after you've clearly communicated them? Do they support your progress even when your success changes the balance between you? Do they treat you with respect when they have nothing to gain from you? These questions matter far more than the label of family. Trust should be based on evidence, and evidence comes from repetition. Anyone can behave well for one afternoon, Anyone can say the right words during a family gathering. Anyone can promise that they care. But character becomes visible over time. Watch what happens when they're angry. Watch what happens when you succeed. Watch what happens when you say no. Watch what happens when you don't need them. Watch what happens when they need something from you. Those moments reveal far more than polite conversations ever will. A trustworthy person does not need you to be smaller for them to feel secure. They don't need your failure to feel successful. They don't expose your vulnerabilities for entertainment. They don't use family loyalty as a weapon. They don't make you feel guilty every time you establish a reasonable boundary. They don't disappear when you stop providing favors, and they don't expect trust to continue after repeatedly breaking it. That's the standard you need to develop. But be careful about another mistake, becoming cynical. Once someone betrays you, it can be tempting to decide that nobody deserves trust. You become suspicious of everyone. You assume bad intentions. You stop opening up. You start treating every disagreement as evidence of hidden betrayal. That may protect you from some disappointment, but it can also destroy healthy relationships. Wisdom is not trusting everyone. Wisdom is not trusting no one. Wisdom is learning who has earned trust and giving it in appropriate amounts. Not everyone deserves the same access to your life. Someone may be safe to talk to about ordinary family matters, but not safe to trust with your finances. Someone may be emotionally supportive, but unreliable with commitments. Someone may be honest, but too impulsive to protect private information. Trust does not have to be all or nothing. You can adjust access according to behavior. That is a powerful form of emotional intelligence. You also need to understand that people can change. A person who made mistakes years ago may genuinely become more trustworthy. But change should be demonstrated, not announced. Look for accountability. Look for consistency. Look for changed behavior over time. Don't restore deep trust simply because someone says, "I've changed." Let them show you. And if someone repeatedly demonstrates that they cannot be trusted, you don't need a dramatic family war. You can reduce access. Share less, create healthier boundaries. Stop depending on them for sensitive matters. Remain civil where necessary. Protect your peace. That is not revenge. That is wisdom. The goal of this entire lesson is not to make you hate your family. It is to stop confusing closeness with trust. Family can deserve love. Family can deserve compassion. Family can deserve forgiveness. But trust should still be earned. And when you become disciplined about who receives your private information, your time, your money, your vulnerability, and your emotional energy, you stop being easily manipulated by titles, guilt, or obligation. You begin judging people by what they consistently do rather than by what you hope they would do. That is where real wisdom begins. Trust carefully, love deeply, not blood. Decide who deserves access to your inner world.